What's up, everyone? We got a new question today, new comment, and it was basically like, hey, what do we do? How you say you don't worm fish that much? What does that really mean? And like, what do you replace it with if you're not worming? Guys, I grew up kind of worm fishing, and I'm not saying I don't worm fish, but I sure don't go to a new lake and start worming. That's probably the last thing I'm gonna do. I'm gonna have one on. I might make a cast with it or two. And what I'm saying is like the Texas rig worm or like something super slow. Like, I'm not gonna do that right off the bat. I'm trying to find fish. I'm not really trying to catch fish. I'm just trying to find fish. And I know that's a different thing, but I'm tournament fishing. I still think tournament fishing leads to catching fish better if you're just fun fishing, because we're so bent on going out there and trying to find fish. Like, that's our number one goal. It's rarely trying to catch them. We're so much more interested in trying to find them than we are trying to catch them. We all kind of think we can catch them at some point in time, but it's hard to catch a fish if it ain't there. And that's the way I always think. So my first instinct is to go try to find fish. I'm always trying to find fish. Rarely am I ever trying to figure out how to catch them. I found out over the years that most of the time, they're not that hard to catch. They're way harder to find. So with that being said, I'm always throwing baits that are better at finding fish. When you're throwing baits better at finding fish, they find fish for a reason. Like, they get bit. And a lot of times what happens is over the time of you trying to find fish, you develop patterns with those baits that find fish. So I have always been a guy that I have grown more and more to the guy who throws baits that find fish rather than baits that catch fish. And the baits that catch fish are, the baits that are slowing down. You're just going to go throw on a spot and try to coax a fish into biting. I always go for the fish that want to bite something. Like, they're more apt to like chase something down, eat something. I call them stupid fish. I'm a guy who fishes for stupid fish. I've said this forever. I'm not a guy who goes out there and tries to outsmart the smartest fish in the world down there that really doesn't want to bite. I'm not saying I can't do that. It's just, it's a lot easier to throw out there first cast on places and get a bite than it is going out there and trying to coax one in to biting. Especially if we take away tournament fishing at this point in time. Tournament fishing starts getting to where throughout the tournament process of practice in the tournaments, it starts becoming a little bit harder to catch those fish because they've been pressured. That's where we have to start figuring things out. That's where I think that the good tournament fishermen figured out better than the guys who kind of do okay in tournaments. Because what happens is we all kind of find fish, but then as the pressure gets harder, it's who can figure out those little ways to get one more extra bite. Or in my case, a lot of times I just find the fish that no one else found. So like I said, it's not about replacing baits. It's just, I go about it in a different way. I go to a lake and I've never been to before. And I show up and I always say, I go throw a topwater right off the bat. I go throw moving baits right off the bat, and I bounce around. I never stick around someplace too long. And what I mean by that is, like, if there's a point that looks good and has these brush tops on it and all these different things, and I don't get bit right away, I leave. I leave because my experience tells me that I get bit right away on places like that. My experience tells me I usually get bit right away on almost every place I've ever been to. I usually get bit instantly. I rarely have to sit around for an hour or two and try to get those fish to bite. I don't like that. That's not fun. So I'm always moving. So when you ask, like, the question is, so there was two kind of parts to the question. Do you throw different things other than, like, do you throw your hybrid hunter more than like the red eye? Yeah, because I've had better success on it over the last 15 years. It was kind of like my video I did the other day on topwaters. I've had better success on like a plopping style bait than a buzz bait. They still both get bit, but I seem to catch more on the other one. I tend to throw baits, they're very typical baits, right? They're nothing crazy. I mean, the swim jig, right? I throw the hybrid hunter. I throw topwaters. I throw rage swimmers on squadron heads. I'll throw a jerk bait. I'll throw normal baits that get bit. They all do the same thing. Oh, and I throw a Carolina rig a lot. And I had a guy comment on the Carolina rig. He's like, man, I kind of thought that was a slow moving bait. It can be, but you got to realize you're throwing a 3/4 ounce to 1 ounce weight on it. It just needs to stay on bottom. I can move that thing as fast as possible. It's basically a biffle head. That's what it was. It was a biffle head that didn't look like the biffle head. I mean, you're just dragging this. So you fish a biffle head fast, fish Carolina rig fast. It's something I can throw on the bottom and cover water fast. A jig works too. I think Carolina rig gets more bites, and I can cover 3 times as much water with it. Plus, it's down there banging against stuff. I mean, they hear it. They come looking for it. So, like I said, everything I'm doing is trying to find fish. I can slow down and throw Ned rigs, drop shots, Tamiki rigs, an Ocho. I can do all that. But I think the problem is a lot of y'all go out there doing that instantly, hoping to run across them, whereas I'm not hoping to run across them. I'm going to come across some eventually. Then I can slow down and fish for them. So, yeah, I replace baits that help me achieve a goal, which is covering water. Okay? So that's the way I look at it. While guys will go, worm docks and throw things at docks, I'll throw a thunder cricket. I'll throw a crankbait. I'll throw a swim jig. I'll throw a rage swimmer. I'll throw all those at docks because eventually, it's rarely do you go to a place and like, they're not going to bite one of those off docks. Rarely do you have to like slow down so much that that's the only way. Docks, it is like that at times where you have to like throw like a wacky rig or something like that. And that's usually at certain times of the year. But for the most part, even if you didn't, you could still get bit on the other. Like you're still going to get bit on something. And so you can kind of start formulating a game plan as to what docks you need to fish. Now, granted, they're going to comment on here and go, well, I've seen it where these so-and-so docks, I had to slow down. I'm like, yeah, a lot of times those are docks you know about. A lot of times those are lakes you know about. At some point in time, you got to get away from the lakes you know about and think about a lake you've never been to before. And if you were just going to go fish docks that day, maybe they're not on docks, and you spent all this time trying to slow down and fish docks, or maybe they were on docks on the main lake or docks over here or this depth dock or whatever. And if you slow down, you just wasted half your day. When I just look at it as I'm going to go cover docks for an hour, the bank for an hour, points for an hour. I'm just going to go across and fish everything that looks on a lake that the lake has to offer, because most lakes have a ton to offer. Right? I mean, most lakes have, if they don't have docks, they have grass. If they don't have grass, they have stumps, and they have rocks, and they have dirt, and they have points, and they have creek channels, and they have flats, and they have bluff walls. And if you just keep bouncing around those, guys, usually if you just do kind of simple stuff that covers water and always change, you can change every 5 to 10 minutes. You really can. Now, I don't necessarily change every 5 to 10 minutes because I'm going to go based off of 25 years of experience, or really like 35 years of experience of fishing new lakes. So I can look at those lakes and I can figure them out a lot quicker because I can go off of history of other lakes that look like that. So when I went to Eufaula, I literally drove through Eufaula down the south end, and I looked around at banks, and I'm like, yeah, and I was keeping a mental note of all these banks I went, like I was looking at. And I pulled up on a bank. I'm like, that bank, I know what that bank looks like. And it was this flatter, rockier bank. And I mean, 3 casts in, I catch a fish. And within 5 minutes, I catch a 4-pounder. And then 5 minutes after that, I catch a 3-pounder. And I was going, yeah, it made sense to me. It was at the mouth of this giant pocket, and it was a transition before it got steep. I mean, it made sense to me. I knew what to throw. I already knew what topwater to throw. I started there for a reason, for topwater fishing, because it just made sense to me. I never went and hit it later on in the day. It didn't seem right to me. But it seemed right to me in the morning time, right? And then there were docks that seemed right to me later on in the day. And then there was certain places offshore that seemed right to me. they seemed right to me because of years of experience. But it was years of experience of going and trying all these new things. I don't get caught up going, we're gonna go throw a worm today, and we're gonna go throw it in 6 to 15 foot of water. I don't do that. I might get pushed in that direction at some point in time, and I did. In the video, I'm probably gonna make Okie Waters, that series, I got pushed in that direction, but I didn't get pushed in it right away, right? I had to find them, and I found them throwing other baits, and then I was able to slow down and catch them. And I don't want to get too much in Okie Waters, but that's, like I said, it pushed me in that direction. I had a guy on my private channel about Toledo Bend, and he goes, hey, did you fish that saddle right there? And I'm like, no, I didn't even think about it. And it might be the most phenomenal saddle in the world. I don't know. He didn't really like comment more on it. But what I'll say is this: on that Toledo Bend event, I was going frogging and sight fishing. I'd already figured out that they bit a frog and big ones would, and the sight fishing was, I had enough good ones to make them play. That was my goal. I could have Carolina rigged. I could have thrown 1,000 different other things. But I said, man, I found 2 patterns that I feel really confident on. I wasn't going to catch a lot of fish, didn't care about that, but I thought I could catch big ones. I ended up making the top 10, and I only caught 5 the first day. I might have caught 8 or 10 the second day. I didn't catch very many fish, but I knew that was a way to catch big ones. I didn't go looking for other stuff. I didn't go looking for, like, I found some good ones at the very end of the day on the final day of practice. Okay, 4 days in. Not good ones, but I kind of figured something out. And what happened was, if I had spent 4 hours fishing saddles that day, or fishing a point here, or doing whatever, I would have never have figured that out in the last 4 hours. So like I said, I'm managing my time to try to cover as much water, put as much information as I can. If I only throw a worm or an ocho on 3 points all day long, or 3 banks, or 3 stretches of docks, I put very little information together. Like I didn't figure out a lot of information. If I fished docks, rocks, stumps, points, banks, steep banks, flat banks, rocky banks, dirt banks, gravel, whatever it is, bluff walls, I fished out deep, I fished out, and I did all that in 1 day. Which you're like, how did you can do it all in 1 day if you're not like sticking with it. I just put a lot of information. I got bit in some places, I didn't get bit in others, some things didn't feel right, and I put it all together. And what I did, I have this vast amount of information. It's not all complete, but it's a lot. It's a whole bunch of stuff. I have a lot of questions, but if I had just hit 3 points that day and 3 stretches of docks, and I'm looking around the lake and I'm like, golly, I wonder about all that. I'm wondering, and I don't know. And all I had to do was maybe go out there to 1 point and throw out there and catch them. Or maybe all I had to do was go down that rock bank and they were freaking loaded on rock banks. Maybe they were on bluff, whatever it might have been. But I spent all this time, doing one thing, trying to make that one thing work. I think the problem is most guys, it's a comfort thing. And I stress y'all to get out of your comfort zone and go try these other things. It's not fun at times. No one said it was. I find it extremely fun. Like, I went out there the other day trying to learn something new, and got bit on it. I didn't get bit all day long, and I didn't. There's a whole bunch of other things. I went and ordered some stuff online. I'm about to go do more of this stuff. I didn't figure it out all the way, but I got close, and now I'm all interested in about it. And so that's why I urge y'all. I think that's why when you watch some of this YouTube stuff, I urge you to like watch the stuff maybe you're not, I wouldn't say you're not that interested in, but you're definitely curious about, and just try it on. Like, you don't have to try it very long, right? Pick the months. There's like it's August. It is hot. There were certain things about suspended fish that I've been doing a whole bunch of stuff about thermocline videos and all this stuff. There's this suspended fish thing going on. That's where my mind's at. My mind's not going on cranking on the bottom right now, or thinking about trying to fish deep for, you know, wintertime fish or springtime. I'm not going down the bank throwing a frog. You know, thinking about spawning fish or shad spawn. I'm like, okay, it's this time of the year. It's a suspended thing. Let's work on that. Let's focus on that. Let's try something new today, you know? And that way maybe you figure something out, maybe you don't. But that's the kind of stuff I'm doing, is I'm trying to always learn a little bit every single trip I go, do something a little bit different. But cover water, guys. You got to cover water, because if not, you don't know if you're around any. I'm not gonna. Live scope helps with that. It kind of lets me know that there's fish around or fish not around. It doesn't mean you can catch them. Trust me, I can see millions of fish on the screen. Doesn't mean you can catch them. And they're not, this time of the year, they're not, most of them aren't even bass, because so many of the fish in the entire lake, they're all like suspended where I'm at. Most of the lakes I'm around, they're all suspended. So it's very hard to depict, but you realize that there's not a lot, you know, there's not a lot on this banks over here, this, like there's a lot out there chasing shad right now. So live scope does help me with that. But it also tells me keep moving, keep looking, like keep moving around, and use baits that I'm allowed to do that with. So that's the best I can tell you about when I look at a new lake. That's what I'm doing. I'm trying to hit it all in one day, not the whole lake, but a bunch of different patterns all at once, and just try to figure out. Eventually, throughout the day, something will click. You'll get bit, I promise. It always happens that way. The people who don't get bit are the guys who throw one or two things trying to make it happen. That's the mistake. That's where you're going to get in trouble. So I urge you, try not to do that. Oh, and there's that bird again, guys. Yeah, you're always worried about that bird. All right. See y'all.